You remember the stories of the void, that vast, silent ocean between the stars. You looked up at night and felt a quiet awe, a sense of magnificent emptiness. You were wrong. The silence was not peace. It was the sound of a held breath. The universe was waiting for something to break, and you were about to become the noise. It started with a ghost, a whisper from a long-dead explorer. Voyager 1, 2 centuries lost, a relic from a time when your reach was still small. You had given it up for lost, a tiny metal coffin sailing into the infinite dark. But its journey had not ended. Its sensors were not designed for this. They were built to measure dust and radiation. Simple things. They were not built to witness damnation. The probe drifted through a graveyard, a field of shattered worlds and dead suns. It registered impossible energy readings, physics screaming in protest. Then it saw the signal, not aimed at it, just a passive, lingering echo, the last cry of a trillion murdered souls. The probe's simple mind did what it was built to do. It observed. It recorded. It turned its decaying antenna toward a home it could no longer see. It sent a message. A single broken packet of data. A scream compressed into numbers. The journey back was long. 200 years of silence. Then a single ping at a listening post in the Oort cloud. The signal was weak, corrupted. Experts called it an error, a ghost in the machine, a final random firing of dying circuits. They logged it and moved on. They had better things to do. Budgets to approve, coffee to drink. You almost missed it entirely. You almost dismissed the one warning you would ever get. The warning was filed away, a footnote in a forgotten database. Life went on. You built taller cities. You wrote better songs. You argued about the same old things. You felt safe in your little cradle of light. Then came the anomaly. It appeared without warning near Jupiter. One moment, there was just the placid gas giant. The next, a wound in the fabric of space. It was not a clean tear, not a neat, shimmering portal from your fictions. It looked like torn flesh, a jagged, bleeding rip in reality. Its edges shimmered with colors you had no names for. It hurt to look at, a migraine for the soul. It defied every law of star science you had ever known. This was not a natural phenomenon. This was a violation. Panic was a quiet, cold thing at first. Then it became a roar. The anomaly was visible from Earth, a dark, angry scar in the night sky. There was no hiding from it, no explaining it away with swamp gas or weather balloons. This was real. Your leaders spoke in calming tones. They promised answers. They promised security. But their eyes held the same fear as yours. Bravery is a strange thing. It is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. And you were still a brave people. You sent a mission. 2 small, fast ships. The Stardust and the Horizon. Their crews were the best you had. Pilots who could thread a needle in the dark. Scientists who saw the universe as a beautiful puzzle. They were not soldiers. They were explorers, heading toward the biggest unknown in your history. They called the pilots the Jupiter Jumpers. A bit of gallows humor. Everyone smiled for the cameras. They waved to their families. Then they climbed into their ships. They flew toward the bleeding tear in the world. You watched on your screens. The entire planet held its breath. The 2 small ships grew smaller and smaller. 2 sparks of light against a vast, impossible darkness. They did not hesitate. They plunged into the wound. The connection held for 3.14 seconds. Then it shattered. For a moment, there was nothing. Just static, a roar of white noise across every speaker. The mission was lost. The heroes were gone. Despair began its cold creep into the command center. Then a new signal came through. Not video, not telemetry. It was audio, a voice. But it was not from the pilots. It was ancient, tired, full of a sorrow that felt a million years deep. The voice spoke in a language you did not know, but you understood. The meaning poured directly into your minds. It was not a conversation. It was a recording, a memory seared into the space between realities. The last testament of a fallen people. You heard their cities burn. You felt their terror as their stars went dark. They gave you a name for their destroyer, a name that felt like poison on the tongue. The Void Swarm. The message showed you what the swarm was. Not an empire, not a race of conquerors. It was a plague, a tide of ravenous, non-living ships. Their only purpose was to consume consciousness, to feed on thought, on article, on love, on hope. It was a cancer that hated life itself. The transmission ended with a single, clear thought. A warning passed from the dead to the living. Run, hide, forget you ever reached for the stars, and be silent, for they are always listening. The pilots' own voices came through after. They were alive, changed. They spoke of a terrible silence within the anomaly, of feeling their own thoughts being tasted. They had touched the edge of the swarm's hunting ground. They had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. They returned to a world that was now profoundly and irreversibly afraid. The comforting blanket of night was gone forever. Now, you just saw the shadows between the stars. You were still reeling, still trying to understand the horror of the message, the sheer cosmic scale of the enemy. The governments of Earth were in chaos. Factions formed. Some wanted to arm, some wanted to hide, some still believed it was a hoax, a grand, elaborate trick. Your world teetered on the edge of a new dark age. Fear was the new king. Then, they arrived. It happened in an instant. One moment, the space around Earth was empty. The next, it was full. A fleet of ships, so many ships, simply appeared. They blinked into existence without a sound, without a flash of light. They were just there. Panic became a global seizure. This was it. The swarm had found you. The ancient warning was too late. Your brief, noisy history was over. But these ships were not what you expected. The swarm, in the memory recording, was a tide of jagged black metal. These ships were different. They were beautiful, majestic. They looked less like machines, more like star-born creatures. Vast, graceful shapes of pearlescent material. They glowed with a soft, internal light. They arranged themselves in a perfect lattice around your planet, a cage of impossible beauty. They did not attack. They did not broadcast threats. They simply waited, silent, watchful. It was the most terrifying courtesy you had ever experienced. For 3 days, they hung in your sky, a silent, shimmering testament to your own smallness. Humanity came to a standstill. You watched the sky. You waited for the fire. You waited for the end. Some people prayed. Some people looted. Some people just held their loved ones close. It was a very long 3 days. Then they spoke. A single, unified voice, beamed into every mind on the planet. It was like the voice from the anomaly. But where that one was full of sorrow, this one was full of a vast, ancient calm. It was the voice of mountains, of old rivers, of deep, quiet places. The voice said, "Be not afraid. We are the keepers. We are the elder ones. We have come to help. You know, for a species that invented doorbells, you'd think aliens would learn to call first." The message from the elder ones was simple. Disarm your weapons. Power down your military grids. We mean you no harm. A simple request that was also an impossible demand. Your generals laughed. Your leaders postured. Harm? We will show you harm. You fired your entire nuclear arsenal at one of the ships. A grand, desperate gesture of defiance. It was a moment of supreme planetary unity and supreme planetary stupidity. The missiles flew, hundreds of them, the best and brightest of your destructive capability. They streaked toward the silent, glowing vessel. The Elder. Ones did not move. They did not raise shields. The ship simply flexed. The space around it warped. The missiles vanished. Not destroyed, not deflected. They were just gone. As if they had never existed. The only thing you had managed to destroy was your own pride. After your little firework display, the Elder once spoke again. Their voice was still calm, but there was a new edge to it. The patience of a parent watching a child throw a tantrum. The message was the same: disarm. But this time, it was not a request. They showed you what would happen if you refused. On your screens, you saw the moon. Its surface began to ripple, like water. Then, a single massive mountain rose from the dust, shaped and molded as if from clay. The message was clear. We can unmake your world as easily as we make a mountain. We can turn your oceans to stone. We can extinguish your sun. We are not here to fight you. We are here because we must, because the enemy that comes for you will not be so gentle. You finally understood. You were not in a negotiation. You were a child being told to put away your sharp toys, because the real monsters were coming out to play. You disarmed, slowly, reluctantly. The power grids went dark. The missile silos opened, empty. The planet fell silent. And in that silence, the Elder ones began to tell you their story. It was not a story of conquest or glory. It was a eulogy, a tale of a galaxy that was once teeming with life, a cosmos filled with song and light and 1,000 different kinds of thought. They showed you images in your mind, crystal cities humming with energy, gas giant beings that swam in the atmospheres of their worlds, silicon life forms that built philosophies from pure mathematics, 1 billion species, 1 trillion unique voices, all singing their own part of the cosmic symphony. It was a galaxy more wonderful and more diverse than you had ever dreamed. And it was all gone. The Elder ones were the librarians of this dead galaxy, the curators of ghosts. They traveled from one ruined system to the next. They gathered the echoes, the last songs, the final warnings. They were not warriors. They were witnesses. They had watched 1 million worlds die. They had seen entire civilizations consumed, wiped clean from existence, leaving behind nothing but silent, screaming space. They explained the great silence. You had always wondered why the universe was so quiet. You had called it a paradox. You thought maybe life was rare, or maybe civilizations destroyed themselves. The truth was far worse. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was a graveyard. The reason you heard no one is because the swarm had eaten them all. It had been hunting for eons, relentless, unstoppable, turning a vibrant galaxy into a silent tomb. And now, it had heard you. Your noisy radio waves, your first steps into space, your forgotten probe screaming its final warning. You were like a baby crying in a dark forest. A forest full of very, very hungry wolves. The swarm was turning its attention. It was coming for you. The Elder ones had arrived just in time, the last survivors of the old galaxy, coming to save the first child of the new. You asked them the question that burned in every human mind. Why? Why us? Out of all the dead civilizations, all the powerful ancient races, why help the loud primitive apes from a muddy little world? You were barely out of your cradle. Your greatest technologies were toys to them. Why were you worth saving? The answer from the elder. One's was the last thing you expected. It changed everything. They told you it was not about pity. It was about potential. They had been drawn here by your probe's cry. But they had stayed because of something else. Something they detected within you. A signal you were not even aware you were broadcasting. A faint, subtle harmony buried deep within your very being. In the twisting strands of your DNA. It was a gift you never knew you had. This gift was a form of resonance, a psychic hum, a way for consciousness to connect without words or machines. Most species in the old galaxy had been solitary thinkers, individuals in a crowd. But humanity, you were different. You had empathy. You had intuition. You could feel what others felt. You built societies based on shared emotion. Your art, your music, your stories, they were all expressions of this deep, unconscious connection. To the elder ones, this was a miracle, a power they had never seen before. To you, it was just being human. You called it a gut feeling, a spark of intuition, a moment of shared understanding. You had no idea it was the echo of a forgotten cosmic power, a latent ability that had slept within your genes for 100,000 years, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And that moment was now. The void swarm was a hive mind, a singular, vast consciousness. It consumed individual minds easily. But it had a weakness. It was a monotone, a single hateful note played across the universe. Your gift, your symphony of blended thoughts and emotions, was its opposite. Your resonance was a dissonant chord that could disrupt its harmony. It was the only thing that had ever made the swarm recoil. The elder ones showed you the history. Millennia ago, another race had possessed a similar, weaker ability. They had managed to fight the swarm to a standstill for a century. They created a zone of psychic noise the swarm could not enter. But they were few. Their gift was fragile. The swarm eventually overwhelmed them. But for a short time, they had been safe. They had been a beacon of hope. Your potential was 1,000 times greater. Your chaotic, emotional, interconnected minds could create a resonance storm, a symphony of light so powerful it could potentially deafen the swarm's hive mind, maybe even destroy it. You were not just another species to be saved. You were a weapon, the galaxy's last, best, and most improbable weapon. Humanity, the messy, emotional, unpredictable variable in the cosmic equation. Who would have thought your love for sad songs and funny cat videos would be the key to saving the universe? The revelation sent a shockwave through your species. You were not helpless victims. You were carriers of a galactic superpower. The fear did not vanish, but it was joined by something else. A flicker of hope, a spark of defiance. The old arguments and divisions seemed petty now. You were humanity. You were one tribe, and you had a job to do. The elder ones gave you the blueprint, the knowledge of the old races, the star science you needed to turn your potential into a reality. They could not fight the swarm for you. Their own minds were too orderly, too calm. Their presence would be like a whisper in the swarm's hurricane. They could only guide you, teach you, help you build the forge for your new destiny. Earth became that forge. Your entire planet was remade. Every factory, every laboratory, every mind turned to a single purpose: building an armada. Not a fleet of weapons in the old sense, not ships with bigger guns or thicker armor. You were building resonance engines, amplifiers for the human soul, ships designed to focus and project your latent gift across the void. It was a project of impossible scale. You built cities that were giant circuit boards. You wove psychic conduits into the hulls of your new ships. The technology was a blend of your own rugged engineering and the Elder One's ethereal science. Metal and light, logic and emotion. It was the great work of your generation. Every person had a role. The welder, the programmer, the artist who designed the focusing arrays, the musician who composed the first resonance anthem. You worked together, all of you. For the first time in your history, every human being was united. The Elder Ones watched. They guided. But they never interfered with your choices. They said the symphony had to be yours. Your anger, your hope, your love, your grief. All of it was needed. Every emotion was a note in the song that would save the galaxy. Your new ships took shape in the orbital docks. They were beautiful and strange, not the gray, functional boxes of your past. These ships were alive with light. Their hulls pulsed with a soft energy. They looked like instruments waiting for a player. And humanity was the orchestra. You were building more than a fleet. You were building a choir that would sing a song of defiance into the endless night. And you hoped, you prayed, that it would be loud enough.